Good day and welcome. Today is another conversation with the Marshall Forest. My name is Stephen Parkus, and this is my good friend Logan Wooldridge.
How are you?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. Looking forward to this conversation.
Same here, same here. And so, on that note, we're diving in today to electrolytes. What are they? Why are they important? And how do they affect us? And so, to start, Logan, what are electrolytes and why are they important?
So, technically, electrolytes are minerals. So, we all know, for at least generally, vitamins and minerals in the diet. They are minerals that carry an electrical charge, is their technical definition. Okay. And that doesn't just mean positive charge, negative or positive. So, they help particularly to facilitate chemical reactions, therefore.
Okay, very interesting. And so, can you explain what the key electrolytes in the body are?
Well, there are eight main kind of electrolytes that are usually talked about. And those are sodium or salt, potassium, chloride, calcium, magnesium, bicarbonate, and phosphate. And one of the interesting things to me that I just want to note here is as a gardener and someone that enjoys nature, these are also very important supplements to plants.
Hmm, very interesting point. Very interesting. And just a little bit of a side. So you said potassium. Is that like the same type of potassium we get from like a banana?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
In
And
fact, bananas are one of the well-known sources of potassium. That's why you're able to pull that right out there. Another good one, just about the same level that you may not know in terms of its connection here, but I'm sure you've had avocados.
interesting. Okay. And so, could you just give us maybe a basic overview, a general overview of the functions of electrolytes?
Absolutely. So they help to regulate and balance many systems in our body. And these, when we say system, I mean like the muscular system, the circulatory system, etc. And they are also key to the transport of water throughout our body. So we talk about hydration a lot, or dehydration, and when we're properly hydrated, what allows that water to move throughout our body and hydrate us is in large part electrolytes.
Okay, right. And so, kind of on that note, could you get a little more? Could you go a little bit more into how electrolytes contribute to our hydration?
Well, as I just stated, they help with the transport of water throughout our body, right? And they assist in keeping the proper level of body fluids in us, as well as the pH balance. So all of that together, I think you can see how electrolytes are kind of foundational to being able to be properly hydrated. If you don't have good electrolytes, this is why when we talk about hydration, we sometimes talk about, pass through speed or the speed of pass through, meaning when you drink water, how quickly is it coming out in your pee? How much of it is coming out based on what you drank. And a big part of that is electrolytes. Which, again, one of the electrolytes I mentioned, sodium, salt. We all know that salt plays a key role here.
You mentioned salt, and I believe this kind of plays a big one in our muscle function. And so, how do salt and the other electrolytes help with our muscle function?
As you mentioned, salt or sodium and potassium actually are crucial for our nerve signal transmissions. So that electrical signal that is generated when we think something, try to trigger a behavior or a motion, and all that travel of electrical signals. And then through that, you have calcium being a part of muscle contractions. Magnesium is a part of muscle relaxation as opposed to the contraction from calcium. And phosphate is involved in the energy production and storage, which is necessary for muscle function. So there's right there more than half of your 8 electrolytes that we listed just on the muscle function. And again, that's just the muscular system. And as I mentioned, almost all our systems have electrolytes playing that kind of key roles in them.
Wow, that's incredible. And so, what are some common signs that someone might be deficient in electrolytes?
So I think we need to be clear here, right? Because I've already mentioned a few times how sodium, and you also, salt, um, is key in many things. And so that in particular, right? Like if you're talking about a specific electrolyte, let's talk sodium. You could kind of argue that you're low on sodium when you start having muscle spasms. Muscle spasms can be painful, by the way. So do you really want to wait for that sign? By the way, again, just for one, maybe two electrolytes. When you're talking about all of them all together, though, and you just mean in general, how do we know when our electrolytes are low? To my knowledge, at least, there is no like everyday way or test. It's more you get blood done, and you'll know generally where your electrolytes are at. Um, Part of the trouble there, of course, being like I mentioned, are the levels fluctuate, and from something like sweating, so you can imagine how much they fluctuate throughout life, right? So your best bet is to just eat a generally healthy diet, or drink what you need to or whatever to keep a generally healthy level of electrolytes in you and not be super concerned about having the perfect balance of electrolytes. And honestly, that's very true of many things in nutrition. Of course, it's good to shoot for good, but to shoot for perfect isn't even beneficial at a certain point because you're stressing yourself out so much for reducing returns, on your attention and stress over such small things. There's plenty of things generally to focus on in health, unless you're a top athlete who, by the way, will have a professional nutritionist and trainer and all these people helping them, so they're not doing it alone. There's no reason for you to do it. I mean, and honestly, if you can afford it, to do it alone.
Right? Okay. And so you mentioned hydration, and how these two kind of go together, but could you explain how dehydration affects electrolyte balance and overall performance?
Well, with electrolytes being so important in so many things, I don't really know how to specify exactly how they would be detrimental to your performance. Let's just say that underlying nearly all aspects of performance, you should probably have a healthy level of electrolytes heading into and throughout any kind of strenuous activity. That's why they are selling electrolyte supplements now, which we can talk about it in a little bit if you'd like. But also, the fact that becoming dehydrated generally implies something like excessive sweating, right? And not enough intake of even water, let alone anything with electrolytes actually in it. And by the way, some water can have electrolytes in it. Water can have minerals in it. Harder and harder to come by these days. But so my point being, though, when you're sweating out electrolytes such as sodium, potassium, you're only even drinking just water, you can see how that can in a sense affect the balance of electrolytes in your system, and now it'll only lead to quicker and quicker dehydration because you're getting less electrolytes, which, as we already discussed, help to transport and retain the water in your system. So it kind of becomes a cycle.
Absolutely. Okay. And so, what are some of the best like natural food sources for maintaining electrolyte balance?
First, I just want to say, to my knowledge, there is no, you know, magical miracle single food that is contains all of them in high concentration. So once you eat that, baby, you're good. But if you're aiming for just a general variety and you're looking for a few things you can add in your diet, first aim for a healthy variety of fruits, because different fruits contain different levels of different electrolytes, but they all generally have some level of them. Plenty of leafy greens, because those will also contain other electrolytes. And then coconut water is known to contain a lot of electrolytes. And as far as natural foods, that is what I would recommend as the most straightforward additions or considerations for your diet. So just to reiterate, variety of fruits, plenty of leafy greens, and coconut water.
All right. And would you say most people get enough electrolytes from their food alone, or is supplementation needed sometimes?
If you're eating a healthy diet, and you're not, again, an elite athlete, so your job doesn't, let's put it this way, if your job doesn't entail excessive amounts of sweating and you're eating a healthy diet, you're probably going to get enough in your diet, right? The more you're exerting yourself, the more you're going to burn through those electrolytes, as it were. And so the more you either need to consume them in your diet, or you're going to need supplementation. At the same time, what is considered, the typical American diet does not contain enough electrolytes. I hope we are shifting that typical American diet these days, but historically, the typical American diet does not. So supplementation is not that not that bad of a thought. And there are a number of electrolyte supplements you can get. There are also just some things that aren't, natural foods that you could buy at the grocery store that are kind of just boosted with electrolytes. So you'll probably be good if you consume those.
Okay. And what do you mean by that? Like certain things you could buy at the store that would have electrolytes in it? Could you
Things like
specify?
sports drinks and Gatorade, or specifically Gatorade, right? That is kind of why they started out and are now still called sports drinks instead of, fruit beverages or something else that they could kind of be called. They started out as sports drinks because they were made for people who were playing sports, so they were sweating more, so they needed to replenish those electrolytes more. So that's why you see on so many labels, contains electrolytes as the big thing of it. Because from its kind of birth of these products, that's what they were actually supposed to be for.
Right. Okay. Okay. So for
And so also with the sweating being mentioned and everything, with the warming climates, it's becoming more and more necessary to supplement with electrolytes. We're sweating more.
so for the sports drink thing, that's actually interesting. So it's more of a restoration and kind of as needed thing for a specific purpose. It's not just that it tastes good, or it's like flavored water or something like that. It actually serves a purpose. Those types of drinks.
Absolutely. And honestly, a lot of, foods and beverages and things, most of them I think start out with a purpose, right? They're filling a niche that wasn't previously filled. It's only once we start, getting into the varieties of really the same essential food. Again, we're talking about generally sports drinks as a kind of category of food, not brands here. Categories of food come about because that category wasn't there before, and we saw it as necessary for being around.
Hmm. True. Very true. Yeah, everything serves a need.
Yep.
Okay, very good. And so we'll wrap up here. And I know this isn't on the list, but if someone were trying to add more electrolyte rich foods to their diet, is there a specific resource or place they could go that you would recommend to kind of search into different foods and stuff like that?
Not off the top of my head, unfortunately, and again, I'm trying to think of something, that's not going to have too much science jargon, or, it's going to have simple ways of explaining these are the right things, these are bullshit, blah, blah, blah. not without doing other anything you're going to look into, you should probably do some level of background on, or have a reliable professional who knows their shit in that area who will help you out with that. So unfortunately, I don't think there's any one place that I could say like go there and all their things are legit, to my knowledge. That's just to my knowledge. I am also not the most well versed on everybody's shops and websites on the planet. So I'm not thinking of anybody in particular. I'm thinking, Amazon, well, they have junk just as much as they have legit stuff.
Right.
GNC, same thing, legit and crap. All these big name places are gonna have both, so you're probably better off at least picking the brain of somebody who would have an idea. If not, hopefully have someone go with you that knows what they're talking about. Or hey, we have cameras now. Such as anybody who wanted to be my client, you could go use a 15-minute consultation, get them on the phone and show them what you're looking at, and they can say that's the right one for you right there.
Right.
One of the advantages of modern technology, we coaches can be there with you in the store, even if we're not there with you in the store.
Hmm. Absolutely. And this does seem like kind of one of those more tailored things. You know what I mean? If you might need to go get a blood test and want to work with somebody a little more closely, personally, one on one, which is where a coach or trainer or a coach would come into clutch, at one on one relationship to help you kind of implement some of these things.
Absolutely. And that's a very good point. Earlier we mentioned, not aiming for perfect. The closer you get to aiming for perfect, the more you should probably consider getting a professional to help you out, or a couple professionals, a trainer, a nutritionist, a coach, a therapist, all the healthcare workers, ideally, if you really want to optimize every part of your health plan in your just life,
Yeah, depends on what your goals are, but yeah, depending on your goals, chase them, do what you need to do to get the help you
Absolutely.
need.
That's my point here. You also don't need to go and get any of these people. Generally speaking, not medical advice, just general, it's unless you're in some kind of, facing life or death situation, and I hope none of you are. But if you are, go get help immediately.
Right.
Otherwise, it's a personal choice. You don't need to go and get these people or you're going to die tomorrow. But if you want to optimize the health, your capabilities, your whatever it is you want to optimize, go and seek the professional who has that knowledge in that area, or be prepared to dedicate a huge chunk of your life to just research. That's not even carrying out the actual actions that are going to get you there, which is why a lot of people go for hiring a professional.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right. So we would love to see you join the Marshall Forest community. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, as well as the marshallforest.com, our website dedicated to meeting your health and wellness needs. And we hope to see you there. Again, this is Stephen Parkus and Logan Wooldridge wishing you progress on your path and good health throughout your day.